Welcome to Just Wanna Quilt, a research podcast coming out of Tulane University Law School, where we explore all kinds of things, stories about quilting, tools, field trips, maybe some famous quilters stop by, and of course a little bit of copyright thrown in just for fun. My name is Elizabeth Townsend Guard. I'm a law professor at Tulane University Law School, and I just wanna quilt. All right, so today we have Joel Sellers. She is one of our most amazing members of our Quilting Army. She is awesome. She has just participated in the most amazing ways, and I adore her, and we talked to her about her quilting life.
My name is Joel Sellers, and I'm in New Orleans, Louisiana this morning.
Awesome. And you are part of our Quilting Army. And I think, if I remember correctly, you came to our launch. Is that right? Is that how I met you?
I did. It was
so
fun.
cool.
I didn't know what a podcast was. They had to show me.
Really?
Right. Yeah.
So
it was the first podcast I've ever listened to.
That is so cool. Have you started listening to others?
I've started kind of searching around to see if there are others I'd like to listen to.
Yeah.
But
But you're a loyalist?
I'm still faithful to you.
Oh, I like that. So you saw us on Facebook, and you came to our launch at Uptown Needle and Craftwork. Is that right? Is that what happened?
I did.
That is so cool.
Uh-huh.
And then you and I also met because we shared a ride up to the big Quilt Guild meeting in Baton Rouge, too.
Yes,
right?
we did. Judy Walker told me some about you because she had started working with you and
right.
when you were just setting things up and
That's right.
and was able to go with you down to Houston, and so
Yeah,
I
right.
knew about the effort you were making, and I thought it was really interesting. So
That's
I wanted to find
cool.
out more about it.
So what we're going to do today is I thought we would talk about your quilting life and being a quilter, and I think that sort of your philosophy is so when I was in grad school, I was super shy, and I asked one of my very gregarious professors, how do you get involved? And they said, just show up. And I think you've got that philosophy too. Like, you just show up and you're suddenly part of things in this really great way. So I want to talk more about that as well, because I suspect you have a philosophy about that too. Am I right?
Yes, I'm sometimes hesitant to put myself forward, but if you have an open meeting like that, and I know some of the folk there, then I'm not likely to show up at a group of total and complete strangers, but something that I've got some peripheral knowledge of. I like to show up and see what's going on.
That's really great. So let's start with, because we haven't done the first question. So let's go to the first question, which is, what is your first memory of someone sewing or quilting in your life?
My mother didn't quilt. My grandmother quilted and sewed. My mother sewed, sewed all of my clothes as a child, and used to, actually win some prizes at the parish fair, that kind of thing. So, and my mother now is 94, and she told me a great story when I started quilting and was going on about the quilting, and she says, I remember going to quilting bees with your grandmother, and I would play under the quilting frame. And all these ladies, and it was her sisters and cousins and whatever, were quilting, and there they were all speaking French, and because we're a Cajun family, so they were all speaking French and quilting. So that was a piece of my history that I didn't really know although I have a couple of my grandmother's quilts, but her hands became very crippled when she was older, and so she wasn't able to do much handwork as she got older. But so there is some history of that in my family.
Very cool. Do you have any of her quilts? Have they?
I have a couple. They're kind of beat up. They've been well used and well loved, and so I just keep them aside. I don't use them these days. I just have them.
And so, when did you decide? When did you start quilting?
I made a pathetic attempt at a quilt in 1976, actually. And now I'm listening to the podcast. I realized that there was some sort of bizarre quilting renaissance.
It was.
And I tried to make something for a friend of mine who was getting married. And it was such a disaster. It was like I took it to the wedding and said, do not ever use this. It's terrible, but I want to let you know that I tried.
Right.
And,
you tried.
and so that was, I don't deal well with those kinds of failures. So it was sort of in the back of my mind that I had to figure out how to do this properly at some point.
Yeah.
And then as I approached retirement, I'd always done different kinds of handwork or something like that, as you know, for downtime, whether it was needlepoint or embroidery or something. And so I am not even sure how I came across and discovered Craftsy. But when I realized that I could do something and see it, you know, a video and whatever, and sort of do it in the privacy of my own home, and I could make stupid mistakes and nobody would ever know.
Yeah.
I thought that was a good thing to try.
That's really interesting. You know, Jill, I love Craftsy too. I love their videos, and I actually love the kits on there. And you're the first one to bring them up in all these interviews. Isn't that interesting?
Isn't it? Well, that was kind of my introduction again to quilting, and the class was Jenny Beyer, and it was actually very complicated because it was piecing, it was applique, it was all these things that I'm a very good sewer because I ended up having to. I taught myself to sew and sewed a lot of my own clothes, especially when I was first out of college and didn't have any money. Right. So I'd get, the Vogue pattern and make complicated clothes. Mm-hmm. So I knew how to sew and I felt fairly comfortable with that. But I didn't realize all the things that she was teaching. It's now as I go back and look at that I realize, where she taught me a lot about the applique stuff and the whole concept of the right seam size and why the points matter and that sort of thing. And she was very, very precise about it. I don't think I followed her as closely as I should have. It would that quilt is still a UFO, an unfinished object. Great. Because I've got all the squares made, but I've got to finish putting it together, and it's going to be probably something at a quilt retreat. I'll finish it.
That's really great.
It was,
That's great.
And from that, I decided I wanted to learn more about quilting and all that, and I found the local quilt shop here, Mes Amis.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful little shop, just absolutely crammed with fabric. And I didn't really understand about quilt shops versus fabric shops. And of course, there are not very many fabric shops anymore, and now there are even fewer. But in there, I found out about these row by row challenges.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that would be fun, and that's simple, and challenge. It was a contest. I mean, that sounded like fun. And that year, I actually won the little deal there at Mes Amis as being the first one back with, And
so cool.
I was up till all hours of the night working on this thing.
That's so great.
And it was fun. I haven't been brave enough to get in the middle of it again, but that was fun. That was a couple of years ago. So it's only been about, I guess, 3.5 years that I've been quilting. Mm-hmm. And at Mes Amis, I found out because she asked me as I was checking out, "Are you a member of a quilt guild?" Because she would give me a discount if I had been.
Yeah.
And so I said, "Well, no, what's a quilt guild?"
Right.
And she told me about them and that there was one there at the shop.
Right.
And she invited me to a meeting.
Yeah.
And I think I kind of just snuck in before they really closed membership.
Yeah.
And because I wasn't as experienced as most of the quilters there. But they were wonderful and welcoming, and that's when I discovered that quilting, there was a community to quilting.
It's interesting, isn't it? I feel the same way. I felt very like solitary, and then slowly, like, you know, obviously this project has made it more social, but yeah, it's interesting to sort of be quilting on your own and then realize there's a whole bunch of people out there that share your passion and love, and they're awesome, right?
Yeah. So absolutely. And because I was retired, I suddenly didn't have, you know, the social outlet of work.
Yeah.
So all the people that you see at the office, and you know, you're getting out of the house and that kind of thing. So it was like, oh, here are people that I can have a common interest with.
Yeah.
And I'd never had much, I'd never been much of a joiner, as, you know, other than sort of, you know, professional organizations and that kind of thing. And so this was new and interesting to me, because they were, well, my guild is all women. It's Cotton Picking is the name of our guild. Yeah. And they're from all different backgrounds, and we're, you know, there aren't any real young folk in there yet. Maybe we need to recruit to, you know, young people, but it's pretty much traditional quilters and that kind of thing, and it's been great. It's been great.
So
and I joined
there's so many guilds around that are small. Like you guys are like maybe 30, right?
We're 20 actually. 20. They're only 20.
20. Mm-hmm. And so when we shared a ride, we went to the big meeting, which was the Gulf Coast Quilt Association.
Right.
And that is
Gulf States Quilt
Association. And they have a big show coming up in April in Slidell. They do every other year.
Yes.
But they had, what did they say, 41 guilds or something? Like, there is, the roll call for guilds was incredible.
There it seems like there may actually be more than that, because there's something like 600 plus members.
It was amazing, and it was raining really hard that day.
And there are pardon?
It was raining really hard that day, and people were, and it was flooding, and they were still coming. It was, I mean, we're still there.
Yes.
I was like, are we going to get stuck in this?
This church? Well, you know, and being in Baton Rouge in flood season is not great. They
not
just
great.
had some
Who
bad
planned that? That was
there.
bad. That was very bad. They kept making announcements that the cars were not flooding yet. It was not good. It was not good.
I'm so glad I wasn't driving that
Me
day.
Too.
I'm so glad I wasn't driving.
We had a very brave driver that day. But
Yep. But those are interesting meetings, because people come and well, there's always a teacher and you know, some of the I'm learning more about the business of the GSQA and what they do and that kind of stuff. So
yeah, they're pretty substantial, because they
they are.
Yeah. Well, we're going to be doing a project hopefully this summer
where
we look at guilds, and I think I'm really interested in sort of the role of guilds in all of this, because it's super important. It's part of the economy, and it's super interesting to see what they do in terms of, like, guilds tell you about the new things, and they do the charity quilting stuff, and they have the circuit for the teachers. I mean, it's super important part of this culture.
I think so.
The big ones and the small ones. So I think it's really interesting that will be part of what we do some work on. So guilds. So tell me, when do you quilt? Tell me about your life, your quilting life now. You're retired.
Well,
what did you do before
I had set myself a goal of doing at least some quilting, say 5 days a week. Mm-hmm. And it kind of, there are times when I'm very faithful and maybe do 7 days straight. And then there are other times, particularly with this show coming up.
Yeah.
Everybody said I said, oh no, I'm too new. I cannot possibly put anything in the show.
Yeah.
And of course the folks from the guild said, no, you have to, they need the quilts. It doesn't matter. Right. I'm sure it's good enough, whatever.
Right.
So I actually had 4 quilts that I decided to put in the show. And so I was desperately finishing quilting a couple of them because I do free motion